Meeting in order. Let's start off with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of prayer, silence, and meditation, whatever you prefer. Pledge will be led by Councilman Scott. Thank you. I'm getting a little feedback on this mic. Can you tone that down, please, for us? Thanks. Okay, interesting day. We're going to have an interesting meeting. We're going to try things we've never done before. I'm sure we'll meet with some success, but not complete success, so I ask everybody's patience at the beginning. I'd like to start this meeting with some comments from our Water Resource Manager, Mr. Johnson, regarding the coronavirus and how it is impacting the GSA and him and our schedule. Mr. Johnson.
Are we going to do a roll call?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did that again.
Yeah.
Steve, before you start, can we hold off and let's do a roll call?
Director Vallejo.
Present. Via phone.
Director Page.
Present on the phone.
Director Kaczynski.
Present.
Vice Chair Heyman.
Present.
Chairman Gleason.
Yeah. Okay, let's start off. Mr. Johnson, are you available to give us an opening comment on coronavirus and its impacts on your team and our schedule? Steve, we can't hear you. Okay, well, we're waiting for Mr. Johnson. If the tech guy could try to reestablish communications with Mr. Johnson, I appreciate it. Essentially, in order to keep this meeting moving, I'll summarize what his conversation with me that was this morning is that there are impacts. He's a geographically located agency. He's got his bigger office in the San Francisco area. They're having some challenges with complying with state mandates. But as far as the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority, everything's going well and very little interruption. And my own personal thought is we've hired an outstanding water resource manager, and so he's carrying the day for us. So thanks, Steve, for those comments. Then I'd like to move on to give us a thumbs up back there when you get Mr. Johnson clued in. And what I'd like to do next is talk for a minute about what we're doing today and how we're going to manage this today, because it's different, because we're going to be doing stuff in compliance with state law and state recommendations. So I'm going to ask Don, our general manager, to review our protocols today so that we can get through this meeting and everybody understand how we're going to move forward with public comments and other things. Don.
Okay, again, I emphasize this is the first time we're trying this. There may be some hiccups, so please cut us some slack, if you will. The meetings are being streamed. This meeting is being streamed live. It's at ridgecrestca.gov /369 or /369/watch. And it's also on YouTube, and that's at youtube.com, City of Ridgecrest Live. I do need to note that if you're watching live, there is a 4-second delay. So what you're seeing is actually happened 4 to 5 seconds prior. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, it's actually more like 22 seconds. So there could be some communication issues. We're aware of those, and we'll try and adjust to those. If you are not attending in person and you'd like to participate with any verbal comments during public comment, please call 760-499-5010. Again, 760-499-5010. And for those of us sitting up here, just to be aware, if someone does call in, Gary in the booth will raise his hand to show that there is somebody on the line. If he doesn't raise his hand, then nobody is called in. But we need to allow for that up to 20 to 30 second delay between callers. If you wish to comment on multiple items, you'll need to call in each time the item is presented. Bear in mind, only one caller at a time, so if you call in and the line is busy, please continue to dial. Again, this is a learning curve for all of us, so please be patient. We'll try and make it work as best as possible. For those of you in attendance, encourage submitting a written comment supporting, opposing, or otherwise commenting on the agenda item for distribution to the board prior to the meeting. Anybody wishing to submit written comments should send them to April, our clerk, and the email address is apriln@iwvwd.com. She can receive those on her phone as they're submitted. If you have written comments you want to submit afterwards, you can send them to April at Water District Office at 500 West Ridgecrest Boulevard, Ridgecrest, California, 93555. And again, I'll repeat the email address. If you want to email a comment during the meeting, apriln@iwvwd.com. Please specify which agenda item your comment relates to. All communication, whether it is a formal letter or an online informal email, will be read by the clerk. And I think that's it.
Don, this is Steve. I'm on. I got through after about 10 calls.
Okay, well, I'm just about done anyway. We are practicing social distancing, and by the looks of it, everybody's pretty good. Lyle, you might want to move over one more chair just to be safe. But other than that, Judy and Don, you're related, so you're okay. Okay, they're thoroughly contaminated. Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. So let me summarize what you're saying. That we have a website. You've given out that website so people can watch what's happening. If they want to make a comment, then they can pick up the phone and make a comment. The delay
Correct.
between YouTube and the other
The live
streaming
stream.
video is between 22 seconds and 4 seconds. So we're going to have to be patient up here and give people time, depending on what they're doing. Is our technical guy going to know whether or not they are streaming on YouTube or you can? Okay, so he'll give us some information. He'll help us out and prompt us and keep us moving in the right direction. And he's also going to let us know how many people are on the phone waiting to make comment when we enter the public comment period. He's running to the door, so I think
One at a time. One at a time.
Okay.
I can only tell you if someone's on the line, not how many people.
That's fine. Okay. You can let us know if someone's on the line, and we'll try as best we can to get to as many people who have important things to say to us, because we want to listen and we want to hear what you have to say despite these challenging times. We started off this meeting with me commenting and summarizing what I thought Steve Johnson's perspective was on coronavirus and its impact on the GA. Steve has since called in and he's on line now, so let me start again by asking our Water Resource Manager, Mr. Steve Johnson, to comment on coronavirus and the Water Resource Manager and his role in implementing our GSP. Steve.
Thank you, Mick. And I apologize. It took several calls. Apparently the line just overloaded, but it finally went through, so I'm on. So thank you. First of all, gosh, hi to all those folks that made it there, especially the staff and the board with Mick and Phil and Al and Ron and Scott and Don and everybody and April. Hi to you guys and all the staff up there and all the stakeholders. This is a really, really strange time for everybody, folks. I hope you're all being safe. You're all like, we're friends, but we're like family up there, especially those in the audience. And we're all on the same page on this, and it's been crazy down here. It's been really, really crazy. And I'll let you know that I'll do first for me and then where we're at on our work and our schedule and what we're trying to get done for the authority. First of all, for me here, it's been the strangest time as I've ever had in all my years in this work, almost 50 years of doing this. It's the strangest times I've ever seen. I'm personally responsible for five different offices, some in Southern California, one in Arizona, and one in Colorado. We also have an office in the San Rafael area, which actually does a lot of our corporate work. And if you may know that San Francisco area, the entire area, was one of the first areas to be issued an order by the mayors on a shelter-in-place with certain guidelines, which were extremely confusing. And I've got staff not knowing what to do, and we've tried to adjust as best we can I'll tell you that we've concluded that internally, at least for now, that while we are not an essential agency like a water utility or a medical office, things like that, we are quasi-essential services because we provide support services to a lot of public utilities that are essential services, keeping them in compliance with their regulatory requirements, with the Department of Drinking Water, with the state, on their water quality issues and on their reports, and just keeping them up to date on their water quality sampling. So we do that across Southern California. We're also supporting a lot of legal institutions and legal cases that are still going and have deadlines. We also support a lot of legislative things that have deadlines and things are still going, like SGMA and like what we're doing with the authority here and in other locations under SGMA. So with that determination, we are keeping the office open. There are certain staff that are coming in every day. I'm still coming in every day. We've tried to make arrangements for our staff, especially those that are at a higher risk. For example, anyone with health issues or a family with health issues that could be affected. Those that may have other vulnerabilities, like, for example, Heather is pregnant. Anybody over 65, we're trying to make special arrangements for them. My wife and I, Sherry, who works here, are both over 65. We're still coming to work every day to be here to support staff. We're running at about maybe a third of our staff coming into the office, with about that other two-thirds, roughly the other two-thirds, trying to work from home on a part-time or full-time basis. And we're able to do that. We were kind of set up for that before, but we're trying to do that while still maintaining the support services that we've been doing. So it's been very, very difficult. I will tell you, it's probably one of the more, it is the most stressful time I've ever had in my career, mostly because when you move from an employee to being responsible for everybody, the decisions you make affect everybody, and it's been very difficult. So we're working on that. Our underlying goal here is to make sure anybody who wants to come to work can come to work. They feel safe to come to work, but to make sure that nobody who feels like it might be unsafe for them to come to work, like they don't have to come to work. So we're trying to follow as close as we can. I will tell you this, it seems to be changing very quickly. We have no intention of closing our doors, but if it comes to that, we will let everybody know. I have no intentions of doing that. We got people that are working, and I'm going to come to work every day and just trying to maintain a safe work environment. So anyway, with that, on the schedule and what we're doing, everybody that we're working with, not just with the authority, all of our clients have gone to modified work schedules. For the authority, the most important for you folks is for the authority. So far, so good. The water district has gone onto a modified work environment with no walk-ins, but staff still working. So far, working with Don and April, Lauren to a certain extent, but working with Don and the staff, we've had really very little to no interruptions on our ability to work, on our work here, and get what we need from the water district as the general manager. With the board and the staff, especially with Phil as legal counsel, they've got modified work schedules, working from home, but so far, with very little real interruptions or delays, we've been able to have access to Phil. Phil's been extremely responsive, and we're trying to keep things moving forward as much as we can with minimizing delays and issues, and actually a very difficult environment. The staff you have from Stetson supporting the authority, between Jeff, Heather, Joseph, and myself, those are the primary dedicated staff. They're all still working pretty much full-time. Heather is the only one, and just today's Thursday, just yesterday, we talked, and I actually expressed my concerns for her because she is pregnant, my concerns for her to make sure she's paying attention to any risk to her or her child. And we talked yesterday, and she has, at least on a part-time basis, started working from home. She's very, very efficient at working from home. So on a temporary basis, we're trying to isolate her so that she stays safe, and we're doing that with all of our employees. So that's where we are. Schedule-wise, we are generally on track on most of our work. We're working with Phil. It looks like more related to public meetings and be able to report to you folks and be able to get public input and share what we're doing and get input on everything that we're doing and what we're trying to do. More related to the public meetings and public access, we're looking at moving things on our schedule that we provided last meeting on where we were going over the next 3 or 4 months. We're looking at moving things back a little bit, probably a month as far as actual action taken at board meetings, moving things back roughly a month. In the next week or so, I expect that I'm going to be working with Phil. We'll see what next week looks like. I hate to put out a new schedule that suggests this is what it is, not knowing where we're going to be. So I personally, and I think Phil would agree, I think we'd like to see what next week looks like, and if things tend to stabilize at all, we'd like to put together a revised schedule and show everybody where we're going to go, assuming things stay the same. If it gets worse, we might have to wait to figure out where we're going. But with that's kind of where we are. We haven't really been significantly interrupted in what we do, but it has been an extremely difficult environment and very stressful, both for me and my staff. But I got to tell you, the staff that you have up there between the water district and the county, certainly the board members, everybody, unbelievable dedication to staying on track and keeping things going. And it works for us because we're trying to do the same thing. So that's what I have, Mick.
Thank you, sir. I've got to add that you did a much more thorough and complete analysis of answering that question that I gave. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Our best to Heather.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we've got the table set. We understand what we're doing. We're going to need patience getting through this, but we do want to hear from the public. And do we have any public comments? Not yet? Okay, well, let's open it up and make sure that we open it up to here. And we'll open it up. And this time is reserved for the public to address the board on matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. So let's open it up for public comments, and you're going to give us a signal when you have someone on the telephone. What?
We're on.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Don Dekker, for the record. I have a very simple, but maybe not so simple question, but the answer may not be so simple. The question is, where is the report on the options for funding the GSP itself that was discussed and talked about 2 months ago? And I see that you have an agenda item that has to do with Prop 218, and it appears to be related to adding an assessment to the property tax that exists already, which is directly related to that. And I'm a little bit disturbed that we don't have the background that goes into that. So what I've got here is partly not on the agenda, and I apologize for the little bit that I did mention that is on the agenda. So I have that question.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Public presentation. Let's go to the telephone, and let's take our first one and see how it goes. Please state your name on the telephone and go with your question.
Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Am I connected?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm going to make a comment here. My name is Mike Neal, and I am going to readdress the issue that I brought up several times with the board, actually, over the issue of that the state of California should be paying for this unfunded mandate that they placed on us. I commented both to try to educate the board on this previously in person. I also submitted a full-page statement about this and asked for written response from the board members on this issue of which I got absolutely nothing from any of them. The only semi-response was that there was a Section F appendix put in the GSP report, which basically, if you look at what's in there, it's very revealing where one of the lawyers says, well, here's ammunition on this issue. So basically, they just looked for ammunition and went back to look for court cases to try to refute what my stance is on this. And this puzzled me for a while, and then I thought about it and tried to figure out why in the world this board, who claims to represent us, would not follow the California Constitution. And finally realized that the reason they're not following the California Constitution and asking the state to do what they're supposed to do is that they are themselves an entity of the state, in that they're not an elected body. They're not a constitutional representatives of the people. They are here because they are existent per JPA laws of the state of California, which are inherently unconstitutional and that they deny selective representation. So at this point, my only response to this is to encourage resistance and rebellion of the citizens of the Indian Wells Valley against this board until we get an elected body in place. If you're not aware, I'm listened to by several thousand people, at least in this valley, and I intend to write letters and communicate with people and encourage them to find ways to resist via refusing payment of the public pumping fee and any other means that they can until we get this situation righted. So I'm just calling, making this comment to let you know that this is the state of affairs that we're at, and we're here because this body will not perform their sworn oath duty to follow the California Constitution.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other callers? Let's give it a minute or two just for the sake of timing. There may be some person out there scrambling to get us a question, and I'll pass it to Mr. Sediba. Do you have any questions, responses to Mr. Dekkers' comments while we wait?
I think it's legal counsel.
Mr. Hall.
So to answer the basic question where the report's at, the report's still being drafted. Not sure when you will get it at this stage. When you do get the report that lists the fees in it, it kicks off a 45-day notice period from mailing. The fact that this board's going to generally adopt the engineering report, which sets those fees and then has to get those mailing out, you're looking at about 60 days after the board takes its first crack at that report before it will be finally adopted by the board at the earliest. So that's where it's at. And the item you see on here, this item 7, that is so you can get the assessor parcel data, which is part of what goes into that report. That is the who could possibly be paying it and where we get the information from them under 218 to send them notice.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I should add one other thing. This report is also one of the keys as to why we need people to register their wells, even de minimis. If your well is not registered and you're de minimis, we're going to start doing allocation reports in the near future, and especially if you're not de minimis. If you are actually using water and you haven't submitted your questionnaire, you're giving up your rights to potentially get an allocation of a transient pool. So anybody out there who has not submitted their questionnaire, they should do so as soon as possible. If they don't know all of the answers to it, submit what you can, put in areas that you're uncertain about, that's fine, but get the report to us. And if you're de minimis, you really need to register with us so that, A, we know what we're going to do with the fee, but more importantly, so that if there is mitigation, which right now we assume will come out of this basin because we already have well damages, we know who you are, because most of those that will need to be mitigated are de minimis wells. So by not giving us that data, you're putting us in a position that we can't help you. So,
thank you. Go ahead.
Mayor? Judy Dekker. I have something for you to think about. I recently attended Indian Wells Valley Water District Board workshop where Chuck Krieger came and gave that board a history of the water district's interactions with trying to import water. What I had as a takeaway from that meeting was that the Water District Board does not want to import water because it's too expensive. And I think this is an alarming thing to come up because we have a finite aquifer that we have been withdrawing water from. Every day you get the paper, except yesterday, and it's talking about new growth. Where is the water going to come from? I think you really need to think about that. I see no evidence of the water district. I'm not sure about the county, but no evidence of the city trying to come up with a fee, an import water fee, or whatever you want to call it, for new growth. Is this something that you, as a board, are thinking about doing in the future? Because new growth impacts the water supply in a negative way of the people who already live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other callers? Okay, are you happy that we've given sufficient time for people to call in? I'm getting a thumbs up, so I'm going to end public presentations, and move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. Open it up for public comment on the consent agenda. We have consent items A, B, C, when C has a whole bunch of things. Anybody having public comment on the consent agenda? Let's give it a minute for people to call in if they have an issue with the consent agenda. Anything yet, Gary? Has 20 seconds gone by? I think it has. Okay, I got a thumbs up, so let's close the public hearing on the consent agenda and then open up for the board for comment and consideration. Anybody having comment on the board about our consent agenda? If not, I need a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're going to have a roll call vote because we have people on the phone, so let's do the roll call vote.
Director Page?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Director Kaczynski?
Yes. Vice
Chair Heyman?
Aye.
Chairman Gleason?
Yes. Okay, we have, moving on to item number 5. Second reading, moving on to item number 5, second reading and adoption of ordinance 01 TAC 20, requiring the installation of, use of, and reporting on metering equipment for the groundwater extractions facility in the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin. Who wants to take this one on? Mr. Hall.
So this item, Chairman, is the second reading of the well meeting ordinance that was put before your board last month. There's no changes to it except for those minor typographical changes that were mentioned during last meeting. They've been included. So there's really nothing more to go in here that wasn't discovered or discussed last month. The recommendation for your board is that you make a finding that this ordinance is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to section 15273 and Public Resource Code 21080. Also, it is exempt from further review pursuant to guideline sections 15061B3 and 15378B5. So we need the board to make those findings. It's exempt from further CEQA review. We also need the board to read the title of the ordinance aloud and then waive further reading, and I will read the title for the board now. The title of the ordinance is number 20-01, requiring the installation of and use of reporting equipment for groundwater extraction facilities in the Indian Wells Valley Basin, and I just noticed a typo, which I have done a second time. It's actually Ordinance 0120. The 20 is at the back end, and it recognizes the year with the ordinance number up front. Some places do those reversed. So, in any event, and then once you've done that and you've waived further reading of the ordinance, it should be adopted by roll call vote.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Let's open it up for the public to offer comment on this particular item. Anybody in the immediate audience wishing to comment while we wait for public comment from other people, remote comment?
I have written comment from Ciro's Valley Minerals.
Thanks.
Okay. Since the IWV GSA did not change any of the wording in its original draft ordinance 0120, in spite of asking for comments, Ciro's Valley Minerals submits its comments on the ordinance for the record. 1. The date of June 1st, 2020 as a deadline for installation of water meters and hour meters is unrealistic. 2. In Article 2, Section 5, SVM objects to and views as arbitrary and unnecessary the secondary metering requirement. In addition, SVM has technical concerns about the type of secondary metering equipment being required. In Article 3, Section 1, there is no definition of a qualified person, nor is a training certification standard defined for a qualified person. There is no process specified for how a person becomes qualified to test, repair, and install meters. In Article 3, Section 4, this discretionary extra special circumstances testing requirement is at the sole discretion of the authority and should be paid for by the authority. Article 6, Section 2 is overly broad and does not exempt a person who is qualified to test, repair, and install meters from making any needed adjustments to the meters. Article 7, consent must be granted by the groundwater extractor as stated in SGMA Section 10725.4. SVM suggests the following wording. The authority shall give reasonable notice to the groundwater extractor that it is planning to inspect metering equipment installations for compliance.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Searles. Any other comments? I'm getting the no. Anyone like to take a comment on Searles' inputs?
I'll just simply say this, that most of what their concerns seem to be are that maybe our general metering guidelines don't fit for them, and I would say in all of these we have an or other alternative option that they can bring forward to Stetson and get approved. So like that would just be my only comment.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a comment from remote. Let's open that up and allow that person to speak. Okay, remote, the caller, please state your name and say your thoughts. Give us your thoughts.
Good morning, Mick.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mick. This is Larry Mead.
Hi, Larry. How are you? Good morning. You're on.
Just great. Well, I just have a question about the
Larry, you're breaking up. Can you hear me? Nod your head. I'm only kidding. Can't see you. We got you now, Larry. Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Okay. Just a quick question, Mick, about I see there's a list of meter installers that you're thinking about using. And I was just wondering, are the meter installers taking the liability for the meters and the damage that they could do if the meters come apart and go into this very expensive filtration system on the pivot irrigation and the micro sprinklers? And that may just be something that the farmers may want to have verified.
Thank you for those thoughts, Larry. Before I get an answer to you, let's keep that line. Let's open a new line. Okay, so can Larry, are you watching this online also? He hung up? Okay, so let's assume he's watching this online so we can get his answer. That frees up the line for someone else. Do we have another caller? We have another caller. Let's take that other caller. Caller, please.
Yes. This is. Yes, this is Renee Westerlusk. Hello?
Hi, Renee.
Hi. I just have a question on Article 3. Yeah, hello, everybody. Meter testing reports and repairs, Section 2, accuracy test report submission.
Yeah.
Renee, you probably have some backflow going on back there. If you could turn off your radio
Okay.
and start from the beginning, I think that would help us all.
It's internet now.
Take your time and hurry up, Renee.
Is that okay now?
Yes, perfect,
here-
perfect, perfect.
Okay, Article 3, meter testing reports and repairs, Section 2, accuracy test report submission. I have a question. Is that test report the same thing as the flow meter update form, or is it a separate form?
Thank you, Renee. We'll get you an answer to that.
Okay.
I'll just say both of these comments aren't to the ordinance, they're to the resolution. So we're starting to, while I know these are kind of companion documents, so far everybody's talking about the resolution at this stage.
Thank you. So we're going to get, Renee, we're going to get you an answer to that.
Okay.
And we're also going to get Larry an answer to his, but it may not be the right moment to be doing that, but I want to get both those persons' answers to their questions. Do we have any other remote comments? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'll be told and ask for your forgiveness if I have to. I'm going to close the public hearing. I will open it up again if I get a signal that someone's calling in. We'll make some allowances for that. But as of right now, the public hearing on this item is closed, and let's open it up for board member comment and consideration. And we will defer answers to Larry and Renee's questions until we get to the next item. Any board member comments?
Page in San Diego County. Yeah, the comments were read from Ciro's Valley Minerals. There was a portion where they said that they thought the authority should be paying for something, and it was going so fast I wasn't following along. What did they think we should be paying for?
Thank you for the question. Let's pass it off to April to reread that portion. Give her a second.
In Article 3, Section 4, this discretionary extra special circumstances testing requirement is at the sole discretion of the authority and should be paid for by the authority.
Thank you, April. Bob, the floor is open for you.
Chair, yeah, no, I appreciate it. So, Chair, can I direct a question to Phil?
Yes, please do.
So, Phil, I know that Sigma itself indicates that the installation of the meters has to be paid for by the owner of the well. And does this ordinance that we're adopting, does it address fees for any of the other stuff that we would require on an ongoing basis, or is that something separate that we would have to develop?
Thank you for your question. Phil.
Well, first off, this ordinance doesn't set any fees. The presumption here is this is a private transaction between the person with the flow meter that wants to make sure it's A, not overreading, or B, underreading, because that will affect how much they have to pay. So that private transaction is between them and the flow meter tester. The only time that the board would come in and require a second or an additional test, frankly, is going to be in those limited situations where we have concern, and fairly obvious concern, that the meters aren't being read properly or they're inaccurate. And the one that jumps out at me now is we currently have some farmers in this basin, who I won't name, that have made reports that they're going to pump up to 10,000 acre-foot per year out of the basin, but they're currently reporting, I believe, under 5,000 acre-foot per year under the GSP fee. Obviously, those two numbers don't jive together, and it could be a meter problem, it could be an overestimation problem, it could be a combination of those, and this provision allows us to figure out what that problem is.
Bob, you're still open if you want to comment.
No, I appreciate that. So essentially, if there are special circumstances that require further testing, it's going to be the direction given to the well owner to get that testing done. It's not like we're going to all of a sudden have a staff of a team of testers to go out that are paid by the authority. So everything we're structuring, as I'm understanding what Phil said, is the requirements that we're placing on the well owner to ensure the accuracy, so that we're charging the right amount once we get to the point of establishing the different types of fees that we will need to create to finance the implementation of the GSP. So I appreciate all the clarification. Thank you.
I get the same thoughts, Bob. Thank you very much, and draw the same conclusions from the comments. Any other public remote comment? Okay, we're at the board. We're closing public hearing, and we're back to the board.
Chairman?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, I just want to make it clear, because I've heard some things about the public not quite understanding this ordinance, that when you talk about groundwater extraction facilities, it's basically those non-de minimis users. Correct? Yes. Yeah, because, there's some thought out there that every well is going to be required to. It's basically non-de minimis users. Okay. Let's make that clear publicly.
Yeah, there's a very clear exemption for de minimis users, and frankly, the feds, right. Be it BLM and the Navy, we can't ask them for these data.
The comments I'm hearing maybe from people who haven't read the entire ordinance, just the title. And the other thing I'll make a comment in Bob's is the special circumstance requirement. Similar to what we do at the Water District, that if someone they believe they have a meter problem, we request that if that meter is in fact incorrect, then the cost for doing that is picked up by the Water District. If it turns out it is correct, everything's fine with it, then there's no cost to the owner whatsoever. But if we I'm sorry, the cost refers back to the owner because he's requested a meter being checked that is essentially good. So that sort of falls here. I'm just saying that if we were to request a meter, a special circumstance, that if it turned out that, and then we would be requesting it, correct? As I'm guessing, mm-hmm. that it might be that we might. And I think that in any case of these ordinances, all of these things can be addressed at the time for consideration. So they would consider, hey, you had me check my meter out, and it turns out it's really perfect. Why should I have to pay for that? And it's something we could take on a one-on-one basis if that objection was to occur. That's how I sort of read this, that in any of these cases, someone comes and say, by the way, you just requested I do this, there's nothing wrong. It turns out there's nothing wrong with my meter.
I'll simply say this, that there's a little bit of a difference, and it's a very significant difference when you really look at it, between the Water District, which owns those right. meters, and these, which they're going to be their own meters.
Good point.
So, we're going to have a fee-based sustainability plan here, and knowing how much is coming out of the ground is critical for that. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to willy-nilly tell people to re-up and go out and spend. I believe the estimate's like $200 for a test. Yeah. It's not a lot when you consider what the fees for pumping an acre-foot of water might very well be. And the fact that most of these are pumping multiple acre-feet per year. So there's that aspect of it. We're not going to go out. If the meter comes back good, then as I said, if you've got somebody out there who said they're going to take 10,000 acre-foot out of the basin, and then their meter is showing 4, and the meter is accurate at 4, and their crop needs more than 4,000 acre-foot per year, we're going to have differing issues that we have to start going down and figuring out.
And you make a good point. The ownership of the meter is by the well owner, not by the district. Not by the authority. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any other comments?
Just a couple quick comments. So back to what Ron, what you were saying, if there was a dispute between the meter being good or not from the owner of the meter, if the GA requested a check on that meter, and they're saying, well, our meter's good, why should I have to pay for that? And we do a check on it, and the meter is good. Now, are they responsible for that fee? I guess that's my question would be, if we requested and we said, hey, we think there's a dispute here, and there is a dispute, or, and it comes out that there was a fault with it, then granted they should be responsible. But in the event that they say, no, my meter's good, and we say, no, we want it checked, and it turns out good, then are they responsible for that fee?
Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I agree with what Phil is saying, is that I think these are special circumstances, that if that happened at that time, that would be something I would believe that if the owner of the meter came forward and wanted to object to the fact or request that we pay for it because it was fine, that could be done at any time and taken in front of the board.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I want to
Okay, I'm clear on that. So that's pretty standard dispute resolution, I would say. The other question I had was just to confirm, because I was asked about any fees or association to de minimis users versus the non-de minimis users with the metering. And my answer to that question last night was it is not affecting the non-de minimis users in a fee basis.
De minimis users.
I said that backwards.
Yes.
It's not affecting the de minimis users. It is strictly the non-de minimis users. There won't be any fee that would be carried over to the de minimis users.
If you have a small well for your house and you don't have a big ag operation along with your house, you're probably going to be a de minimis user, most likely. I mean, we've already been down that with the GSP fee. This does not require a de minimis user to put a meter on their well.
Correct, and there's no other fee associated to it, because they were just, my answer to them was exactly that.
Yeah.
And I just want to confirm publicly from the board that is
if you're
the
de
case,
minimis, you don't have to have a meter on your well, and you're not going to have to do this reporting and this accuracy testing. It's only for those that are pumping more than 2 acre-foot out of the basin per year.
Correct, and that's what we informed them. So, okay.
Good question, Sammy. Thank you very much. Ms. Kaczynski.
Yeah, I got another one for you. Let's say that you have a de minimis user that has what I call a cooperative for parcels held up. And one of the parcels happens to be for commercial use, whether they're growing something or it's livestock or something like that. How is, I don't know that we know the answer to that yet. How is that supposed to be addressed? Are we expecting the de minimis well, whoever manages it, on the cooperative to deal with it with the 1/4 of the property that is using basically a non-de minimis use? How would that be handled?
Well, first, the non-de minimis use must be registered, it must be metered, and it must be reported, and it must be accuracy checked. The de minimis uses off that well, they're just like any other de minimis use. As to how that plays out and where the meter goes and how they figure it out, that is mutual, and most of these aren't going to be a mutual. This would actually be well sharing agreements, which are 4 or less. That is going to be in that well sharing agreement, and it's for those 4 parties to determine how they're going to do it. This gets into what you're doing with well sharing agreements. Most well sharing agreements I've seen, I will say, in the more recent future, more recent years, more or less the years I've been an attorney, those well sharing agreements often have metering requirements for every single house on there, because that's how you determine who should be paying what for the electricity and those other things. Now, there are some that I've seen that are 30, 40 years old that don't have that, and they have other they have other steps in place to figure out how they're going to pay for their electricity costs. But that is really for them to decide. They need to meter, and that one needs to be metered.
You okay, Ron? Any other comments? Okay, I'm looking for a motion on item number 5 and the second reading. Do we have to read it publicly and then make the motion, or have we already done that?
I've read the title, so if you're willing to waive the title and adopt on staff's recommendation, that would be enough of a motion.
I'm okay with that motion if someone's willing to make that.
Mick, I wanted to ask a question. So I serve on the PAC. Did you guys receive comments from the PAC, and did you consider them as part of your background?
Yeah, well, I'm getting a nod from PAC lead saying. Well, you received them. Yeah, we got them and was considered.
Steve would answer that better than me. Yes, they were received. Yes, they were considered. There were some changes made. Eddie Teasdale had one in particular which was sort of a disagreement between PAC and TAC members as to what type of wells should be on there and what type of testing they should be set for. Meters, not wells, sorry. And that has to do with whether or not it's an ag well or a domestic well. But that also fits in with our exception that we can overrule these very general guidelines for more specific cases.
We did take comments, and the appropriate ones, we did make adjustments, but like the ordinance, we consider them to be pretty much minor changes so far. And there's provisions in there for some of the questions that have come up, like Eddie raised separately was, how do we make application for an alternative meter that's not on the list, and it's covered in the ordinance and in the meter specs. And I've assured Eddie that we're certainly here to do a reasonable review and I don't want to call it enforcement, but follow through on the meters.
Thanks. Tom, does that answer your question? I was just surprised that you're asking me a PAC question. Here we are. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm looking for a motion to, yes, sir. Okay, we got a public, I'm sorry. The public, we're going to open that again. No, it's okay. Bring it, let's, remote caller, you're on. We're reopening the public hearing for your benefit, so you can speak.
Yes, Mick, this is Elaine Mead. I have a question. I sent it to April, but evidently it didn't come through. Could you have Bill read Article 3, Section 1 on the meter testing and tell us who is responsible for the payment of the testing mentioned in that specific item?
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. Are you done, Elaine?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
All testing in this meter ordinance is the responsibility of the well owner, unless we ask for meter testing that we later find out was unneeded. I think we will then have a process in place at a future date which would allow somebody to ask for that money to be recouped. But all meterings, just like the cost of the meters and Sigma, are the meter owner's responsibility. So is the testing, because it really doesn't make sense to have a meter in place that isn't accurate.
Is Elaine still on the phone? Okay. I'm assuming, Elaine, that I see you nodding, which I really don't, but I think that's a thorough answer. I didn't physically read the paragraph, but I think you got a good answer. Anyone else? I see nothing remotely. I see nothing in front of me, so I'm ready to wait for a motion on this particular item.
A motion to approve this resolution 2-20, adopting groundwater well flow meter standards for the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin, and waive the full reading as number 5.
Yeah, you're one ahead. We're on the
ordinance. We're on 0120.
Yeah.
0120?
Yeah, it's just a number.
Okay. So I'll reread it. So a motion to approve the resolution 0120, adopting groundwater well flow meter standards for the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin, and waive the full reading as per we read it prior.
Is that sufficient?
In accordance with staff's recommendation, I'd just add that, and that would be it.
Could you add that, please, to your motion? In accordance with
staff's recommendation.
In accordance with staff recommendation.
Perfect.
I'm a bit confused, Chair. We're on the reading of the ordinance 0120.
Correct.
And I believe that he was referring to resolution when he read the title of it.
Oh, did you? I didn't hear you say
that. Yeah, it's ordinance 0120 about the installation and use of meters. It's item 5 on our agenda.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Let's go back. Let's do this. Let's make it simple. Let's make this real simple. Phil, would you please read the title of what we're going to vote on?
So the title of the ordinance is Ordinance Number 0120, requiring the installation and use of reporting of metering equipment for groundwater extraction facilities in the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin. Staff's recommendation, which is in the staff report, lists the CEQA findings for exemptions, and it requests that you waive further reading of the full ordinance based on the title being read and then adopt.
So I need a motion on that statement.
Motion to approve. That statement as read
Perfect.
by Phil Hall.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote.
Director Page,
Aye.
Director Vallejo,
Aye.
Director Kaczynski,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heyman,
Aye.
Chairman Gleason.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. Resolution 02, TAC 20, adopting groundwater well flow meter standards for the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin. Staff.
So I'll kick these off. These standards really are less legal and more in Steve's sort of area of expertise. They're mostly drafted by Steve. We've done a few minor changes to make it into a resolution at the legal side, but it's really all Steve's document. It has been through the PAC and the TAC. Comments were received, and Steve's addressed those and made changes where appropriate. The recommendation from staff, because this is a resolution, is we can adopt it today. We don't have to do a first read, second read. And the CEQA findings are the same. When we're ready for a motion, I can read a recommendation then for a motion if you'd like, and we could move on to addressing anybody's comments if that's what you would prefer.
Yes, I do. And we'll get to, we have 2 comments from Larry Mead and Renee Westerlus. We want to make sure we respond to those as we go through this. Okay, other than Larry or Renee, unless you want to qualify your earlier comments, any public comment? Anybody sitting in front of me have a public of the 7 people here? I don't see any, so let's open up to remote call-ins. April, did you have something?
Yes, I have a couple.
Okay,
submitted.
hold the remote. They can call in, but put it on hold, and April, over to you.
I have one from Eddie Teasdale. 1, please elaborate and explain the specific guidelines that will be required to have flow meters that are not on the current approved list be evaluated for approval. We really need this to be a transparent process with specific agreed upon performance metrics. His second question is, why is NSF 61 certification being required for flow meters on irrigation wells? This is not a standard industry practice and adds an additional burden to our client.
Thank you. Can I ask you to read his first question one more time because I didn't get the whole thing?
Please elaborate and explain the specific guidelines that will be required to have flow meters that are not on the current approved list be evaluated for approval. We really need this to be a transparent process with specific agreed upon performance metrics.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Teasdale. Any other comments?
I have one more from Ciro's.
Okay, while we're waiting, let's read this while we're waiting for public comments. Searles, go ahead.
Ciro's Valley Minerals meters and regularly reports its water production and has done so for decades. Consequently, SVM understands the need for accurate metering of water flow and flow meter standards. SVM does not agree that duplicate meters are desirable or necessary and sees no evidence with the documents presented in support of the proposed ordinance that the initial cost and ongoing expense of maintaining duplicate systems is justified. SVM does not agree that the list of contractors qualified to install, repair, test, and calibrate meters is adequate, nor is the process for adding other qualified meter inspection and repair contractors to the limited list sufficiently defined to enable supplementing this list. There is no list of criteria used to determine if a contractor or contracting firm is qualified. Without qualification criteria publicly available, the list of approved contractors appears arbitrary and is not transparent. There are also no standards listed for how the flow meters will be tested or calibrated by the qualified person. SVM has contacted all 3 firms listed in Appendix B and C. 2 responded. Golden Meters Service does all training in-house. Only 1 or 2 of their technicians may have water licenses. McCall's Meters only does testing. They do not do installations because of liability concerns. Training is done in-house and their technicians do not have water licenses. Pump Check was going to get back to us but did not. It is not clear how these contractors were able to be qualified to be on the approved list. Resolution 0220 states that the flow meter should have a tamper-proof seal that prevents removal of the flow meter, etc. SVM does not agree that industrial flow meters should have some sort of tamper-proof seal. As an industrial facility, SVM needs to perform documented maintenance on its water system and associated equipment. The authority can inspect the maintenance work, and maintenance records as often as it deems required. Also, there should be a provision in the 30-day rule which allows the extractor to notify the GA that a specialized flow meter is back-ordered or has a long lead time, and it might take more than 30 days to repair or replace.
Thank you, Searles. Any other remote comments before we start tackling these questions? Okay, Mr. Hall, let's start with you. There are 3 questions I see. The first one is first 2 are from Mr. Teasdale. The second one from Searles. Do you have all 3?
Well, there's also Renee's, and I'd like
I'm
to
sorry,
start.
yeah.
I'd like to start
And
with
Renee and
Renee's
Larry's, yeah.
because I think it's the easiest, and the answer is simply yes. That is the form that you would be using for your second metering testing because it's updating your first metering testing on installation. So that is essentially the form. Whether Steve says don't answer certain questions on it in the future is up to Steve. Second, well, defining standards for an abstract that we don't know is frankly impossible. So yes, there is some abstract, a little bit of a subjectiveness that we are relying on for our water resource manager to establish as to what he's going to consider an alternate. An alternate needs to come close to what we are already establishing here. It seems to be the one key is, do they need to have a seals for public drinking water versus not? And that's really for Steve to answer. I see reasons why you would want them on all wells to have public drinking water seals. Some don't consider that, and I believe there were conflicting comments from the PAC and the TAC on that.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a question. Let's talk about Larry's question first. Larry's question had to deal with damages incurred in the inspection and the implementation of the meter, this whole deal. So could you address liabilities for damages that are...
Sure, I'll go back. As I was saying earlier in the previous one, that's a private transaction between private parties. The GA has no liability if the private contractor that they hire, stubs his toe out there, frankly, if anything. That is on them. It is part of the process of now going into a basin where we're going to have meters, and those meters are owned by those that own the well.
Renee's question had to do with, what did her question have to do with?
Whether or not the Appendix D flow meter document is what we will be using for subsequent testings, and that's the same one.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to Mr. Teasdale. Had 2 questions. Second one was on NSF 61. Can you take to that?
Well, that'd be Steve's response, and that's the seals, whether or not
How about his first question? Mr. Teasdale's first question. Will you review that question, please?
It, but
I think you did too also, but let's double
His
check.
first question was on alternative meters, and I think we've been in touch with Eddie. We have not given him specific guidelines, but we've let Eddie know that as soon as we get things rolling and we get this information going, we're going to. I actually sent him an email just yesterday and said, Eddie, the process would be, I don't know what you've submitted yet because I don't have it in front of me, but if you submit a request to review the specific specifications of the meters that you want to be considered, if you submit that, we'll review it and get back to you. And he said he's fine with that. That's just as of yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Could you also comment on Searles Valley's questions regarding the qualities of the people that we're asking to do the work on the contractors that we have listed?
Sure. Very, very generally, but very important. There actually are not that many folks that do this, or businesses that do this. We coordinated with the Water District on who they use. We use McCall's. We've used a couple of these meter testers. We here at Stetson in the San Gabriel Valley, we actually manage the production reporting and the meter testing for all of the groundwater wells in the entire San Gabriel Valley, which is well over 200 wells. And we use these testers. They don't have a specific certification. We qualify them based on their experience We normally review their work product on an annual basis for their individual contracts and what they do. If there are issues, we try to address those. But there's just frankly not that many out there. If somebody has a meter tester they would like to use, it's not that hard just to send us that information and we'll look it over. We do want qualified folks. We do want them to be fully 100% independent. It is important that they do have a way to seal the meter so it can't be tampered with between testing, because we're looking at testing either every year or every other year, and meters aren't that difficult to tamper with. So the seals that we normally would be putting on a meter would not obstruct normal maintenance that might be done. As Ciro's pointed out, they do maintenance on things. They shouldn't do maintenance and being that kind of maintenance on the meter itself. If they're doing that kind of maintenance on the meter, when they put it back or do the maintenance on it, should be retested and resealed. So generally speaking, I don't see any problems with their questions, and these are just normal routine operations that we do when we test meters on production wells.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Hall.
I'd like to add two things. One comment Ciro's made was they didn't believe that secondary metering was appropriate. Well, Ciro's itself is pulling 3,000 acre-foot out of this basin with a sustainable yield of 7650. I, for one, don't think relying on one meter without a backup when meters are a mechanical device that fails at that kind of water usage, I think it's unwise to not have a second metering system on there. Second, I think everybody should know that this is done through a resolution, and it's done through a resolution for a specific reason. It allows us nimble ability to add people at basically a moment's notice, unlike an ordinance, which takes a first read, a second read, and then 30 days to become effective. So you're looking at a grand total of 90 days to change the ordinance. We can change this resolution in really 5 days' time to get it on the agenda with a change and before the board.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Let's bring it to the board for comment and consideration.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Phil, you actually asked my question. I was going to ask that about the resolution. So if there's an additional meter someone's added, if there's another alternative for testing that is acceptable, that all could be run through here, and this could be changed. So it's basically a living document and such, because we're going to learn from it and make additions or subtractions from it based on experience and what information we get from the pumpers that are required to put meters on. So I can't disagree with that about the whole resolution, knowing that. Yeah.
Can I just ask for clarification, Jared? The way I read this is secondary meter is actually an hour meter, not another flow meter. Is that correct?
If somebody would like to put a second type of flow meter on there because they have a variable speed pump that a hour meter is not going to be able to just do a simple mathematical calculation to come to a flow, then they need to run that through Steve, and we can adjust for those.
The hour meter would be in conjunction with the electrical use. That's how you determine.
Yeah, hour meters for electrical use. If you have a variable speed pump, your electrical use kind of variables based on how much water was coming out. So I do understand that, and in those situations, if somebody does have one of those really nice variable speed pumps, we might readjust the secondary metering. The alternate in here is for both the first and the second meter. So if there's a situation that calls for using something other than a simple Hobbs hour meter, we can adjust for that.
Any other comments from the board?
Did we address, I'm sorry, Chairman?
Yes.
Did we address, I think Larry had, or someone had to comment about the standard to J, I'm trying to find the NSF.
Yes, that we did.
Yeah, we did address that? Okay.
Yeah, well, I think we did, because we asked about NSF 61 and Renee's question, and you answered that.
Yeah, that seal is the difference between ag and domestic seal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think we got all the questions. Okay, I'm waiting for a vote on this issue.
I move that we approve Resolution 02-20, adopting groundwater well flow meter standards for the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin. Do I need to add any more than that, Phil, or do you want to add something?
I would just add in accordance with staff's recommendations so we can get the CEQA language in.
And that language. Thank you.
Second.
Let's call a roll call vote.
Director Page,
Aye.
Director Vallejo,
Aye.
Director Kosinski,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heyman,
Aye.
Chairman Gleason.
Aye. Moving on to item number 7, and I'd like to thank everybody once again for your patience, those watching and those preparing to make phone calls. Thank you very much for staying with us. Item number 7, agreement with Parcel Quest for assessors data from San Bernardino County.
And that would be me. In consideration of adopting an administration fee associated with implementation of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, staff will be required to prepare a Proposition 218 report as part of the process for adding a new charge on the tax bill for parcels within the Indian Wells Valley Basin. The last equalized tax roll contains parcel data that is used in this report. It provides mailing addresses for sending out notices to landowners, providing them the opportunity to protest the new charges as required by Prop 218. The last equalized tax roll is what will be used in our Prop 218 report to put those new charges on the tax bills for the parcels within the Indian Wells Valley Basin. As there are parcels within the basin located in San Bernardino County, staff will require those parcels and addresses to include in the Prop 218 report. The San Bernardino County Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk uses a vendor, Parcel Quest, to serve customers with specific data requests due to insufficient staff to respond to data requests. In response to requests for information from San Bernardino County, Parcel Quest has presented a Parcel Quest parcel clipping license agreement, which is in the board packet for consideration. The fee for this service is $1,800. The parcel information addresses will be needed for the staff to prepare the Prop 218 report. Staff recommends your board approve the Parcel Quest parcel clipping license agreement and authorize payment for services outlined in the agreement in the amount of $1,800. And I would add that I think Director Page has a comment on this.
Are you done?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Mr. Page.
Yes, I would like to suggest a slight modification to the staff's recommendation. That I agree that we should approve this licensing agreement, but rather than authorizing the authority to pay the $1,800 invoice, that we would have San Bernardino County pay that invoice.
I think that's a brilliant suggestion. Thank you. Okay, we have we've had conversation from staff. Now it's open for the public for public comment. I see no one in my immediate presence. Let's give it some 20 seconds for our YouTube watchers to phone in. Still nothing? Okay, nothing. So let's close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for a comment, consideration, and a vote.
I've got no comments, but I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Parcel Quest for assessor data from San Bernardino County with the fee being paid by San Bernardino County.
Outstanding.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Then let's have a roll call vote.
Director Page,
Aye.
Director Vallejo,
Aye.
Director Kosinski,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heyman,
Aye.
Chairman Gleason.
Aye. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 8. Independent IWV GSA staff, including general manager position. Done.
Okay, this agenda item was added late last week, so there is no staff report. It was added at the request of the chair. So staff is looking for discussion direction from the board on how this board wishes to staff the authority instead of the current in-kind services. And the staffing would include a general manager primarily.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. This is my fault for adding this late minute. We had a conversation where I'm just thinking that the pressure is becoming more. It's more and more clear to me that we need to have all our employees in positions where they're not conflicted. And I think it's incumbent upon us to establish our credibility, establish our independence, and in order to do that, we need to hire an independent person and staff to the maximum extent possible to manage the issues that confront us and that challenge us consistently. So I've asked Dawn to put this preemptively on the agenda so that we could have a conversation as a board and as a public to understand the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that we made a vote last year that we were going to provide in-kind service, and the Water District has stepped up to the plate and swung the bat over and over and over again, and I'm so thankful they have. But I think we've reached a point, and we're quickly getting to a point where, and we've recognized, all of us have recognized, that we're putting our employees in positions where they're answering to two bosses. They've got their own agency and this GSA, and not always do those agencies and the GSA merge into one focused, agreeable position. It's not that they're going differently and disagreeably, it's just that we are putting our employees in a place where it shouldn't be. So my thought and my want and desire is to have a vote from the board to agree with me that we need to establish this independence as quickly as possible. And so that's the issue at hand. And I'd like to hear from the public what their thoughts are, and then I'd like to have the board comment on it so we can either make a vote to establish this as procedure or not. So let's open it to the public for public comment, and let's open up to remote if we have any. And while we're waiting for remote, we still have 7 people in front of us who'd like to make comment. We have someone getting up.
Judy Decker again. I don't see how you can afford it.
Thank you. Still nothing. Okay. We're going to close the public hearing, but if I get a thumbs up from you, I'll reopen it to allow that public to make comments. So we'll close the public hearing, but still leave it a little open for remote testimony. And let's open up for the board for your thoughts and considerations.
Chairman?
Mr. Kaczynski.
And you know I've been vocal on this one quite a bit. I agree with you 100%. We need to become an independent organization. I also agree with Judy. It's very hard to pay for this. However, that's what we're doing with the Prop 218 requirement ordinance. We're looking at funds to run the organization. Now the question is, how do we do that? And my biggest drawback on that, or the biggest concerns I have, is the staffing. Everything else, location, building, phone, that's one thing, but it's the staffing. There's only, and I've been doing staffing for a lot of years, and I can tell you this, that there's a couple ways you do. One, you can hire and become an employer yourself, which is probably one, I would say, one of the most complex and expensive ways to do it. Another one is you can contract an organization. And, I'll say like Stetson, although they don't do this, but an organization that does everything. And then there's been some say that we can actually agree that somebody becomes their own LLC or something. We contract with an individual. Currently in the laws in the state of California, we got to be very, very careful with that. And just a few come to mind. If that person works in your facility, they're your employee. If they don't do this for anybody else, they're your employee. If you direct them on what they're going to do, they're your employee. So I'm saying that of the 3 options of hiring, finding a firm to do it, or an individual do it, I think we need a good legal review of that, what we can do from the standpoint of individual contracts. I'm very familiar with somebody becoming a entity themselves as a contractor and hiring themselves out to an organization, and the state coming back and saying, whoa, this is no longer acceptable. This person, you give them a place to work, they don't do this for anybody else, or they do it primarily for you. They are your employee, and you owe us all the employee taxes. In this particular case, you owe the PERS and FERS, whatever else was involved in paying for them, and it amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I don't want to put us in a position where we're doing it incorrectly. We need to look. I agree with you, it needs to be done. But we need to look at every option of how we're going to man this and who becomes the employer. So, with that said, I do agree with you. If you're looking for some kind of an agreement from the board to proceed to become independent, I agree with that. I also believe that, and I've said this before, the Water District has stepped up, and I appreciate everything Don and his staff has done, but it's a lot, and I agree with you. It's something that we expect to end no later than the end of the year. So we have until that time to figure out how to do this. And I think that sort of falls in line with the Prop 218 that we're looking at and funding the whole thing. It's just how are we going to solve this staffing issue? And we need to really think outside the box. What are the options to do that? And I don't know what they all are. So I expect staff to get together, talk about it. What are the available ways of doing it? Because becoming an employer yourself puts another huge burden on the organization. So the person who is the general manager / finance person and the clerk will now become HR people if we become employers. If we are able to find an outside organization that specializes in managing these things, both from the management standpoint, the financial standpoint, everything that April and Don does, I'm not comfortable with that unless they're local. I think we really need somebody who's going to be here with this community to constantly be there for the input that's going to be required, or people walking in and wanting information and everything that's going on. So unless there's a firm out there to do it. So then it boils down to, really at this particular point, we become an employer or we find a contract organization. So those are the things I want the staff to think about to move ahead with this. And I think very quickly, too. And I know that we've worked at administrative budgets, and that'll be coming out, more details that'll be coming out as we move forward with any ordinance. And the public will get a good chance on seeing what's going to cost to run this operation. I just want to make sure that we have it, that it's been put together in such a way that we have adequate funds to do it if we become an employer. Because I have a feeling in order to become entirely independent, that's what we're looking at. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
And a good opinion, too. Mr.
So I'm in agreement with the fact that we do need to have an independent organization. And so I think first off, and it's been touched on, money and the costs are an issue. Money coming in, how much we're going to have. I think that's first and primary, most important thing, because that's going to gauge what we can do and how big and how much staff we can have. So I think that's going to be the key part is getting the money flow in. There was another point I was wanting to make, but
we can get back to you, Mr. Damon. We can get back to you because we have public comment.
Okay.
Let's open it up, the public hearing, one more time, because we have a remote comments. And the remote caller, you can please start talking.
Hello?
Hello.
This is Renee Westerlusk again. My only comment on this is I agree with Judy, where is the money going to come from, and I agree with Ron Kaczynski that we need to do it independently, but could there be something worked out where one of the government agencies, either the county, the water district, or the city, temporarily pay to contract it out, hopefully to someone local, to do the work so it would be independent, and just do it temporarily until we have a permanent solution where the GA can actually hire someone to do it down the road.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see you. No, there's no more. Okay. Let me throw my 2 cents in. I'm sorry, you got your second.
Okay, yeah, I'll finish up real quick. And so I think, again, first off, we need to get the money in, because we can't do it if we don't have the money coming in. And second was, I think this isn't a new process that's being done. Other cities, other regions have water management agencies, and so I think we should get with Stetson, and they have a vast knowledge of what these other cities and water agencies are doing, and see what some of our options are as far as staffing and what it would take to put together a plan for our which is considerably smaller area. And so I agree. But I think we should do it. I think we should probably set a time, date, and have it as a primary agenda item that we could discuss these issues and kind of walk through it. But I think if we get a vote to approve it, we need to get the money coming in. So,
thank you. Let me throw my 2 cents in. I agree with almost everything everybody said. We don't have the money. We don't understand the complexity of the issue. I agree with all those things, and I agree especially with your comment about beginning the process of doing this. What I don't agree with is putting it off any longer than we have to. So I'm not willing to say the end of the year, but I am willing to say, and I guess we can have that conversation in the process of what does as soon as possible mean? Does it mean September? Does it mean October or whatever? So I guess what I'm looking for is, and I think I've got it, is a willingness by the members, and a vote will assure me when Mr. Page and John check in, that we need to begin the process because it's going to take some time. I don't know that we're going to find a local person. I don't know that we're going to find a local company. I just don't know. But, okay, got it. But I'm willing to begin the process to do discovery, to begin the conversation, so at the earliest possible opportunity and the most appropriate earliest possible opportunity that we take our money and establish that independence, so relieve the stress on people who are our employees now and are suffering in kind for what we're doing. And I want to reiterate before I stop is that the Water District has done a phenomenal job. And Don, you've done a phenomenal job of doing this. And I just think that's, I just don't want to push it farther than we need to. Okay, let's open up to one more time to remote phone calls. Whoever's on the remote, you can please say your name and offer your thoughts.
Hello, Mick. It's me again.
Hi, Larry.
I don't want to go into a state of shock here, either one of us, but I have to agree with you on the GA needs to be independent, needs to be an independent location. And I think the best way to approach this management is to find a independent business person and let the business person then subcontract out for the GA to run it. Just a suggestion from an old guy. You guys have a good one.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. And I'm not surprised at all that you and I agree. We do on most things. Any other comments from anybody? So I guess the motion would be, we need a motion or a resolution or a referral. What do we need?
Referral, I'm hearing, I guess.
It sounds like just assignment to the staff.
Yeah, that's what
but I do have one last comment.
Go for it.
When I said a year, I'm setting that as the maximum. Okay, I agree with you. It needs to happen as quickly as possible, but I don't, at the end of the year, I'd like to see it be the deadline. I know you don't usually make a recommendation saying you're ordered to do it by the end of the year because we don't know what's going to go on with it.
Great. Okay, so let's make a referral to staff to begin the process to do discovery on develop. Yes.
Bob and John, I don't know if we've asked them to chime in.
Who cares what they? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Bob and Inyo County, your thoughts, please, if any.
Yes, Bob. This is Bob. I support continuing to move down this path, and I think it's the right goal to try to establish an independent staff. But obviously, we haven't figured out our finances yet, so it's going to be difficult to take that step until we do. So, I support continuing the work and having staff continue to do the analysis that we talked about.
Thank you, Bob. John, any thoughts?
Nothing to add to Bob's comments there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so you got a referral? Do you have understanding of what the referral is?
I believe so. We start looking for independence and figuring out what of the three general options those are. We'll head down.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 9, Water Resource Management Report. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. And this is probably the last time I'm going to talk, so I just want to say one more time to all of the people up there in Ridgecrest and all of the staff, everybody's working on it. This is a really, really stressful time, and just be strong. Our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody, and everybody just be safe, and we'll hunker down and get through this, and we'll be back on regular operations before long. So I just want to do that. This is my last time to talk. Also, Mick, Don, Ron, April, Gary, you guys, amazing job to pull this together. I just want to say this is working very well. This wasn't an easy thing to do, so superhuman job to pull this meeting together. So, okay. Don, if you would, let me know, Don, you're there, let me know if I've got the first PowerPoint up on Prop 1 status schedule.
Yes, it's up.
Okay, so real quick, invoice number 3, we actually, with DWR, we thought we had it all pulled together. We got notice from DWR last week from Jennifer at DWR. She told us that she was pulling together that invoice as being approved, and the partial payment the progress report was approved, and she had the letter pulled together on our the extension request, and we will be getting them this week. Then she sent something out with the invoice. She had a couple more questions she wanted answers. So Heather has responded to that and sent it back. We are again waiting for DWR on that, but we expect to get payment very, very soon. It's almost $190,000, so it's imminent, but we are waiting for DWR. It is in their hands. And as I mentioned, I'll go to invoice number 4. Invoice number 4, it's up there. You'll see 85%. That was last week. It's pretty much ready to go. We do not want to send in invoice number 4 until we have an approval on invoice number 3, and they're actually processing or sending in payment. So we're holding it, but within the final invoice number 3 approval from DWR, when we know we've got it, invoice number 4 will follow a couple of days. I don't want to send it the same day, but we will be sending it within a couple of days. Heather's got it ready to go. Same with the progress report. So it's not as big, but we need to get it in. The grant agreement revisions. Just yesterday, we got some new information on this. As I mentioned, we were told by Jennifer last week that it was all approved. The letter we sent was good. Then she responded with a couple more questions, which we responded to. And then just yesterday, we did receive something. Don received it. We got it. We got to looking at it. And it appears we've got a call. We talked yesterday. Don and I looked at it. We had a call with Heather on the line. We talked a little bit about what we received from DWR yesterday. We've got another follow-up call set up for next week where we're going to go through it in detail. The package we received from DWR is a little confusing. One of the things the package had was an amended agreement, but at first blush looking at it, it's amended far beyond the extension request we asked for. They've actually redlined in reference to our recent award of Prop 68 grant funds. So we've got to puzzle through this. It looks like they're trying to bundle our current Prop 1 grant agreement with the new approved Prop 68 agreement and just make it an amendment to Prop 1 rather than a new agreement. So we just got it yesterday. We've got to work our way through it, make sure it will make sense, and make sure it doesn't delay the extension we've got. So we've got a little work to do there, but we are working on that. So that's the current status of Prop 1 and, to a extent, Prop 68, which I have a separate PowerPoint for. So there may be a little bit of repeat there. But I have a little more on Prop 68 when we get to it. So, Don, if we get the next slide up.
Yes.
On SDAC.
Yes.
It's up?
Yes, it's up. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Real short, it ties directly to Prop 1. Everything we're doing on Prop 1 on the agreement extension of the amendment ties right to SDAC. We're staying in touch with our contractors. They're being patient too. They're still holding on to their proposals. They're ready to go when we go. The extension will still allow us enough time to complete the SDAC work under that grant agreement. I remind everybody that's fully funded. There's no matching here. It's fully funded by DWR. So it's still on track for us to move forward as soon as the agreement extension of the amendment is approved and executed. We will actually bring it back to the board just for confirmation that the board still supports going ahead with the SDAC work. But when we do, we'll bring it to the board. Once the board approves, we'll get moving on that. So that's the status of SDAC. Really not much changed since last month. So the next slide, or the next PowerPoint.
It's up.
It's the GSP annual report.
It's up.
Yes, it's up.
Okay, the GSP annual report. I want to update everybody, especially those who are involved in the TAC, because PAC 2, but certainly the TAC on this. The first annual report for the GSP is due on April 1st. It came very, very quickly after we all adopted the GSP. very short timeline. So we've been scrambling to pull it together. I think it's just about done. Heather's working on it. I think it's just about done. We are still on track, I believe, to get it submitted by April 1st and meet that deadline. And we indicate on that PowerPoint what it covers. It's primarily a status and data update. That's all it really is. It's a technical annual report. This is not a 5-year update or a status update on how the GSP is going. It's just an update on where we're at on implementation of the GSP, and then it's pretty much data. So primarily, if we're going to have anybody review this annual report, it would be the PAC. Due to the timeline and having to prepare this annual report, try to review it internally, have it be reviewed by the authority staff that we have, the team staff that we have. Just not time to try and run this through a TAC for this particular annual report. Again, late breaking. I just saw, I think it came yesterday or this morning, but I just got from Don that there's a new notice from DWR that they are allowing delays for submitting annual reports to up to 30 days. They are also allowing delays on providing public comments on the GSP for like 30 days due to the coronavirus, the same thing we're all dealing with. Basically, DWR is continuing their operations. They're trying to keep things on track, but they're recognizing that there's a lot of things that we've already talked about that are affecting people's ability to get their work done. So they're allowing some delays. I'm not saying that we're not going to submit this annual report by April 1st right now. I think it's going to be an internal discussion with the staff team and legal counsel to see whether or not we should regroup and maybe send this out for review and come back and use that 30-day extension or not. We'll figure that out, but because this is very late breaking, we have not had time to address this. But as of right now, we are set and ready to get it submitted on time as it was set up in the original requirements for the first annual report. So that's the report on the first annual GSP annual report. So the next slide, let me know when it's up, Don.
Well, we've had some little confusion. We did not have that slide, but now we have the Prop 68 status slide up.
Okay, good. That's fine. Okay. So Prop 68 status. As you recall, I reported at the last board meeting, we made an application for significantly more money than our work with DWR staff indicated we qualified for. We did that on purpose because the state, the way they work, they tend to change the rules as they go. They tend to have more money sometimes available than they thought they did. Sometimes they run short. But we made an application with the intent to make sure that we applied for everything we thought we could get awarded if they had possibly raised or changed the qualification limits. We applied for around $750,000. Worked with DWR staff, indicated that we actually qualified. This was before we submitted the application for the grant. Indicated we qualified for about less than $350,000 that we actually qualified for. So we were fine with that. However, when they initially released their preliminary awards, we were only awarded $200,000, the minimum. We caucused with the team staff. We worked with the board. We explained our position on disagreement with that preliminary award based upon our work with DWR staff. We worked with your staff team, including legal counsel and Don and April, through the board. We did submit not a protest, but certainly a request for clarification and provided further clarification to DWR about our position on that preliminary award. Again, reiterating that our discussions with DWR staff indicates that we should have been qualified for at least close to $350,000. I'll remind everyone, the two things that the DWR focused on with their reduced award were imported water, and they said you've already got a grant for imported water, and shallow well impact mitigation. Those were the two areas. We explained to them in the letter that imported water that we already got a grant for was to investigate the possibility and the availability and the cost of imported water. for the Prop 68 grant, which is implementation of a GSP, we applied for further work on the development of an imported water supply. This goes beyond the cost estimates, the project, the conceptual project we put into the GSP. This is implementation. We're going out to try and, this is a grant to go out and find the imported water and start working toward implementation. We explained that. In the original Prop 1 application for shallow well mitigation, impact mitigation, we included money in that application for developing criteria for identifying and evaluating shallow well impacts. We put that in the GSP. For Prop 68 funding, we made an additional application for implementation of the shallow well impacts mitigation plan. Development of the formal plan, we just put the outline in the GSP, would be development of the shallow well mitigation impacts plan and actually implementation of the shallow well impacts mitigation plan. So we explained that in the letter. We sent it to DWR. I know we had discussions about possibly going up to DWR. Chairman Gleason had suggested that we might go. I was certainly ready to go. I know that Mr. Gleason, Chairman Gleason was going to go. Maybe Mr. General Manager Don Sediba, maybe Phil. We were all planning to go up. I know that Mick did have a phone call with DWR to express his concerns on this. The news was not very good. After the phone call indicated that maybe that we weren't getting anywhere. Then ultimately, just recently, which was this week, Don got notification that they had done a reevaluation, and our new allocation went from 200,000 award was from 200,000 to 330,000, with an indication that 30,000 of that would be subject to basically, I'll just be simple about it, basically availability of funds. That currently with their reevaluation, they may not have enough funds to go beyond 300,000 for the authority, but they awarded 330 subject to availability either now or in the near future. So very successful. I think Mr. Chairman Gleason's phone call, I think the letter that was drafted and the detail we provided and the work with DWR staff was very successful. So we're able to increase the allocation from the award from 200,000 to 330,000. To further complicate, I mentioned that we got a package just yesterday from DWR on the new amendment to the Prop 1 agreement. Included in that Prop 1 agreement was a letter basically memorializing the award on Prop 68. There was an error in it. It indicated an award of 300,000 with 30,000 of the 300,000 still subject to availability of funds. So we did talk with Don yesterday, Don and staff. Your general manager, Don Sediba, followed up with DWR, made it clear to them what our award said, our revised award said, and was able to get them to resubmit our verification letter. And as of right now, we are back on track. The award is for 330,000, with only 30,000 of that subject to availability of funds. So that brings us right up to speed. A little bit of hard work by the board and to staff to be able to basically get us at least another 100,000 on that grant award, and more likely, ultimately, 130,000. We intend to focus the actual award on trying to reimburse past costs that we've already got. Help use this grant fund from Prop 68 toward picking up past costs. That's our primary goal, and we'll be reporting back on that. That's the end of that particular slide. I'm sorry for taking long, but I've got one more. Don, let me know when the groundwater pumping verification PowerPoint is up.
It's up, Steve.
Okay, so real quick, questionnaire was released on January 31st on our letterhead. It was developed through staff. We put together the questionnaire. We've got a lot of questions and issues, whatever. We sent it to all known or suspected non-de minimis pumpers. Everybody went out. Responses were due by March 1st. As of the 18th, which is well beyond the deadline, we've received 30 responses. I know of a couple that may still be coming in. Out of the 55 that we registered that we know of, non-de minimis pumpers. So We're not getting the kind of response we had hoped for. I know we're working with legal staff, with Phil and with the legal staff and the team on reviewing enforcement and consequently how we're going to follow up on this. That's not quite clear yet, but we have a lot of work to do. I already have staff, in-house staff, starting to work on the drafting of the actual water resource manager pumping verification reports. We have developed an outline of the report. The outline will be consistent for all reports that we write, and the outline is very general. We've taken it from prior groundwater adjudications. This will not result in any kind of a recommendation on water rights, which is for groundwater adjudication. This will result in a recommended or at a conclusion on the verification of the pumping information that was provided. So we have started on those. We are currently working on those, and we'll be working with staff on review of those draft reports when we get those done, the legal counsel, and working with the staff team and legal counsel on how we get verification documents from the non-de minimis pumpers that have not submitted. So I think that's the end of that slide too, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Congratulations on the $130,000. Let's open up to the public for comments on the water resource. Steve, you're done with your water resource report, correct?
Yes, I am, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's open to the public for comment. We're going to allow the remote callers some time to call in. Okay, the time has elapsed. I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for comments and consideration, and I will always keep in the ear for remote testimony. Is that a thumbs up? We have a caller? Okay, that's a thumbs up. You agree with me. Good. I like it when people agree with me. Okay, board, your thoughts.
Yes, sir.
Ms.
This is a
Kaczynski.
question for Steve. Invoice number 4 from Prop 1 status at your first slide. I think you said payments after retention $95,000. Is that because we're at the end of the available money for that portion of the grant? Or I'm just questioning, that seems fairly low is all.
For the work that was done, yes, for the work was done. We've done a lot of, it was a very busy time during that quarter, but for the work that was done and qualification for the grant, yes. See, part of the work we're doing is for the grant, part of the work we're doing isn't qualified for the grants. Yeah, it's just a matter of the type of work we're doing. It will definitely go back up going forward.
Okay. I just thought maybe we're approaching the end of the money that was available in that particular portion of Prop 1.
Oh, no. We have lots of money available on Prop 1 still. Lots of money.
Thank you, Ms. Kaczynski. Any other thoughts? Any board members remotely have concerns? Not hearing any and not seeing any, I need a vote to approve the Water Resource Management Report.
It's just receive and file.
Okay, receive and file, it's done. Let's move on to General Manager Report, number 10. General Manager.
Okay, item A is the monthly financial report, which is in your packet. And before I go over it briefly, I just want to acknowledge the effort and cooperation between county staff and my staff, Ty and Diana, that put this together every month. I think they do a very good job, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. Briefly, if you go to the bottom, at the present time we have $43,242 in our account. And the invoices that are outstanding are listed below, the unpaid invoices. And again, we'll look for approval of all invoices and pay those that we can. I do want to note that probably for the first time that I'm aware of, the pumping fees came in within $100 of what we forecasted. The bad news is we didn't forecast very much, only $20,000. So good news and bad news. Steve mentioned it before, he alluded to it, the third invoice, which covers from April to June of 2019 in the amount of $186,199.70. When that does come in, and we hope it comes in soon, most of that will go towards repaying the money that was taken from the Brackish Water Prop 1 project. And when that's repaid, that will leave a balance of $19,990.69 to be added to our account. So getting that fourth and fifth invoice in is going to be important to keep the cash flow going. So that's just an overview of our situation. Questions?
Why don't you finish A, B, and C, and then we'll
Okay.
hit you
All
with
right.
questions.
B is the update from Capital Core Group, which you have their project update for February in your packet. I won't read their report, but I do want to acknowledge that we did receive an email on Tuesday. This has to do again with the continuing impact of coronavirus and the impact it's having on both state and federal legislature. I'll just read it. The California legislature yesterday, which was Monday, recessed all legislative session operations through April 10th, 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is an extension of the planned normal spring recess district work period. There will be no hearings or votes during this time. Staff has been advised to work from home or remotely for this period as the Capitol and annexes will be closed to the public and disinfected. Capital Corps will continue to communicate with legislators and staff electronically during this period. In addition, they will remain in continual contact with coalition members. And the coalition members they're referring to are those that also have critical infrastructure projects. We talked last month, we mentioned that there were 3 or 4 other military installations that had similar situation as Indian Wells Valley Basin. So working with those coalitions and develop the next steps for when the legislature does resume. The session is scheduled to resume on April 13th, 2020, subject to call of the chair. This is a parliamentary order that allows the Speaker of the Assembly and or the President of the Senate to resume their chambers earlier or extend the recess as necessary. With regards to the executive branch and agency operations, they're subject to executive orders concerning the pandemic. For the time being, the governor has left discretionary decisions to the various secretaries and directors. Capital Corps has not seen a great impact to the California bureaucracy. However, they do expect that hearings, proceedings, adoptions of draft and final rules, which according to the Brown Act must follow for public comment, are likely to be deferred. Item C, well registration. Since Ordinance 0119 was passed, we've had 97 new well registrations. All but 5 of those are claiming de minimis status. So we have a total of 112 de minimis wells and 107 non-de minimis wells that are registered. I'll note the total of de minimis was a little different than I reported last month because we found some redundancy. So it's now 112 and 107, and that's all for that item.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Let's open it to the public for your thoughts and concerns regarding the General Manager's report.
Dave Janis with my China Lake Alliance hat on. We obviously are working some of the same issues with Capital Corps, so my comments on number B. Part of the strategy that they had outlined that they were working with this agency on with Defense Community Infrastructure Program was to get the guidance from DOD to be settled and focused on critical infrastructure issues which would support our ability to get imported water project funding out of it. My information from our efforts is that it is beginning to go down that path. We took that same approach, as well as many other community organizations that support bases. So it looks like the Alliance is bearing fruit there. And in fact, now the pressure is on. What it looks like as part of that guidance is you have to have shovel-ready projects. And so now the urgency is settling on what our staffing is, what our engineering for the projects is, and getting those in. There were $50 million this year in that budget. We will not be able to present a shovel-ready project. We, the GA, would not be able to present that, but we are in line next year if we have one available. And there are efforts from all the other community alliances that I work to get that $50 million. Right now, we've signed on to an effort to get it up above $100 million next year overall. So that would put us in good stead. But the sense of urgency now is getting into implementing the GSP, identifying the projects that we need, and putting enough engineering discipline to them to be able to become eligible for those grants. There are also several other grants in work that would require similar level of engineering support background for us to get the grant money. Also, I became aware, our Assemblyman Vince Fong indicated that in the California state budget, there's now $35 million allocated for Sigma implementation. I've got to do some research on exactly what that means, what applicability. That's something we ought to do together to figure out. It looks like, in the case some of the concerns, and we've been working this for a while, is that yes, in a way, Sigma was an unfunded mandate. The state's starting to realize and perhaps fund our ability to implement something in the future. So I think that's good news. Thanks.
Hold on for a second. I got a question for you. $50 million is interesting, Dave. What about what's the timeline for defining shovel-ready projects?
Well, it depends on they haven't written it down yet. That's what everybody's waiting for. But the urgency is, we had focused on next year. And so we were looking at, as part of that consortium, what Capital Corps had gone forward with was, we knew we didn't have one ready this year, so we'd let Mountain Home, for example, or one of the other ones that are in the consortium that did have a shovel-ready project, we would support in the consortium for that in exchange for their support with the rest of the consortium for what we come up with next year, hopefully, as we up the amount of monies. $50 million is not really a lot nationwide.
Is the China Lake Alliance the group that is representing us on that consortium, or who's representing us in these conversations?
Capital Corps is on those.
Okay. And you're tied in with Capital Corps, and that's how you're getting this information?
Yes. One of the things we set up originally when this first met was I happen to be on the subcommittee that deals with the water marketing, water allocations, and we discovered we had mutual contacts and mutual agendas. And so we coordinate so we don't step on each other. That's the nature of why I know and want to contribute some of this to you. It's additional information that in some cases has been coordinated with Capital Corps, in others, other folks that I work with.
Are you satisfied with our lobbying efforts to date? And I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, you can always do more lobbying,
right.
But I think Capital Corps has been very effective. I like their strategic plan, and I think we're getting the bang for the buck right now.
Thanks.
The GA.
Yes.
And my subcommittee hat on.
Right. Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other thoughts from the public?
Chairman, this is Commander Benson.
Someone speaking?
Yes, this is Chairman Gleason. This is Commander Benson phoning in.
Hi, Pete.
I just wanted to answer one of your questions there. You asked about the call for projects, shovel-ready projects. That call already came out about 2 weeks ago.
And what is the timeline to that call? I mean, when do you have to respond to that call?
It's come and gone for this year.
Okay, but how about, so we expect the same time? I'm sorry, go ahead, Commander.
I expect next year. I expect next time it'll be roughly kind of the same time of year. So for the planning cycle, I would try and have something buttoned up by the fall, so we're ready in the late winter, early spring to see that data call.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Benson, was that shovel-ready project call for the coastal royalty funds or DCIP?
DCIP.
Okay, thanks very much. That's info I did not have.
Right, that's a different one. Good, beautiful. Glad to hear that, Commander. Thank you very much for those words.
Can I make
Yes,
a comment here?
I have not received the data call for the COSO royalty projects yet for this next year.
Thank you, Commander. We just want to be, the whole part of this conversation is trying to get ahead of it and trying to be prepared so when the call comes out, we're ready to go.
We have put in requests for when that call you just referenced on the COSO.
So we're working both.
Yes.
Beautiful. Outstanding. Tom.
My question is whether or not the shovel-ready requirement also includes holding a right-of-way in your hand, because there's significant lead time for that as well. So we'll need to have basically engineering would need to be complete before a right-of-way grant could be evaluated?
I'm assuming the answer to that question is yes, but let's ask Commander Benson. Commander Benson, do you have a response to the comment? Is we have to have all the paperwork, all the ducks in a row before we submit including right of way, before we submit as a definition of shovel ready. Do you agree with that?
Correct. So for it to be considered, we would need all real estate, any type of transaction that needs to happen there, as well as the engineering ready. So essentially, shovel ready is you hand me the money and I can go put it on a contract. So all of that has to be done, the environmental considerations, everything else that would go into a project.
Thank you, sir. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, we better get on it.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Any other thoughts from the public? Okay, we got nothing, so let's close the public hearing, and we've receive and file. We don't need a motion to receive and file. We just got it. Let's move over to closing comments. Anyone on the board? Let's start remotely. In your county, do you have a closing comment?
Nothing that isn't already on somebody or people's minds. Everyone stay safe out there, and hopefully we get through this pretty well and come out on the other side pretty quickly.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your patience. San Bernardino County?
Yes, Chairman, I just want to thank staff for all the work they did putting together very quickly this new format of the meeting. I think it went pretty smoothly given all the challenges that you faced. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ron?
Yes. I'm going to address something. We had a comment a little bit earlier. Did you have something, Dave?
It's for staff also, so when you take up staff, I just wanted to...
Oh, you're just getting ready. Okay. I just want to make a comment because it was made about the workshop that the Water District had. I want to make it clear that what we were doing is we have not said no to imported water. Okay? That's absolute. But what we feel is we need to turn every stone and take nothing off the table to look for imported water, other water sources, including recycled water. I want to make that clear. So I don't want anybody going away thinking the Water District is against imported water. I want to make that clear. But we have to look at every possible way that it is. And our objective is how do we do that to keep the cost the lowest possible? And I think that'd be everybody's objective. So that was the comment I want to make about that. And secondly, I want to reiterate what Bob said. I want to thank the staff. I think during these times, it's very tough putting this agenda together and the way we handle it. I thought it went very well. And Director Gleason did a great job because dealing with what's on the phone and all and make sure it happens right takes a lot of work. And I want to thank everybody that's here. And we'll get through this. And Gary, Gary, thank you. All right. So and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Gary a real person or is just
a
mannequin out there? I don't even know if he's real. I don't trust that hand. Okay, Mr. Heyman.
No further comments.
Any other staff? Yes, sir.
Two things, Chairman. First, from a staff perspective, the thank yous for the meeting and the way it's being run, I think they mostly should go to Ron Strand at the city. He's been through this already once with the city, and we basically co-opted everything he did, stole it, and put our name on it. And, so thanks for the kudos to staff, but it really should go to Ron. And then the last thing. Okay. Gary and Ricka? Okay. Thank you, guys. This actually worked out pretty well. The next thing I wanted to say is it's really disappointing that we're not getting these questionnaires sent in on the allocation stuff. Mm-hmm. And, frankly, on de minimis registrations yourself. For those of you out there that need to be registering and have been told to register and you're not, you're only hurting yourself. The GA can get by without your registrations, but when it comes to mitigation or allocations, if you haven't given us data, it will be treated as though we have no data for you, which is not beneficial to you. It only hurts you that should be registering if you're not.
Yeah, that's a legal statement, not a policy statement. The policy statement will review those when able, but it does not look good, and I agree with what the lawyers just said. I'll wrap this thing up by saying thank you. I don't believe Gary's a real person. I think he's just a mannequin back there. But thank you very much. Oh, yeah, Staffer, you had something? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
You're the one standing. Go ahead.
As PAC chair, it's okay. You didn't look over here.
I'm sorry.
Having virtually attended all three of the other meetings that have been done this way, it's really pleasant to see it work this well. Good job, Gary, from me too. Thanks. At the last meeting, we did give potential tasking to the TAC to expect 2 engineering report documents, and perhaps that's too simplistic. I think it was a 218 engineering support and an sustainable allocation report that we would be tasked to review. And do we believe we're going to have a PAC, those in time for a PAC meeting on the 2nd of April?
My concern is not so much that we're going to have it available. I think we will. Are you ready to go for that?
Sure, I can answer this. It goes back to some of the other comments we had about timelines. The concept is that it will go through the PAC and TAC. The board has asked for us to go through the PAC and TAC, but as you might guess, we are all rapidly dealing with something else at this time that's taking most of our energy. I don't know that there will be a board meeting of a PAC and TAC in April based on what we currently have for a situation, and I don't even know how we could run a PAC and TAC meeting under these circumstances. So I believe that is going to be pushed to May, but that's just my belief right now. It's not firm one way or the other.
I think I agree with that, and I'm saying I'm involved with process. I'm concerned about how we're going to do this.
That's why it came up.
Yeah, but the certain circumstances we're dealing with, how we're going to have a successful PAC meeting and how they're going to interact when the purpose of the PAC meeting is to get large numbers of people together and voice their concerns and get varied opinions. So we've got to deal with that. Don't know how to do it. I don't think it's a question of the report itself. I think it's a question of how we're going to integrate it into the process and how we're going to move forward, understanding
I'd like
the
to make a
limitations we have.
recommendation here because it relates also to the reviews we did for items number 5 and 6 on the agenda today.
Go for it.
Okay. I don't know how, right, the PAC has 12 voting members, although I think right now only 11 are assigned, and 4 non-voting members. There's no way we could do this social distancing and still have the ability to comment without handing microphones from person to person, and we've already seen people handle this microphone up here. So I don't think we could meet those requirements, and certainly as things are anticipated to get more stringent over the next couple of weeks, likely if we were going to do a PAC meeting in April, the agenda would have to be decided by next Friday. So I didn't see that as possible either, but it occurred to me in the process we just went through with the review of the ordinance and the resolution, the PAC had established about 1.5 years ago a process that's been executed almost monthly, where we receive some documents from Stetson or staff and we submit independent review, because those documents typically weren't received in a timeline that supported Brown Act requirements before the next PAC meeting. And then those independent comments were posted prior to the subsequent PAC meeting and discussed there, but the key thing was that they were posted for the public to see also. There were several references today to inputs from members of the PAC and the community, our stakeholders at large, that have not had the opportunity to have been posted publicly. So my recommendation was, since if we're not going to have a PAC meeting next month, 2 weeks from now, which looks highly doubtful, that we begin to post those things in accordance with the process. Even though we're not going to have a meeting, they're available to the public as what the PAC member comments were, what the TAC member comments were. And that is consistent with what we did for the GSP comments since the last PAC meeting and TAC meeting was the combined one in November. So going forward, if things get tighter and we don't know what that brings, that would give us the opportunity to do a similar review of these 2 reports, perhaps when they come down, is independent member review and then publication online so that the board had that information. That would be a recommendation as a way, if things get tighter, we can both get the maximum public view of what their representatives on the PAC are, because each one of them was assigned to represent a stakeholder group.
Thanks, James. We're going to take that under advisement. Any other comments?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Page.
Yeah, I'm just curious, does Stetson or the Water District or the city have a license for something like WebEx where you could conduct PAC and TAC meetings as webinars, providing a process for people to ask questions, get into a queue to have their questions answered and asked, to allow for the social distancing while still being able to interact and make presentations?
Does San Bernardino County have it?
We do, though I would not be the person to set it up.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. Do we have it? Any of that
The
capability?
Water District does not currently have it, but we probably will be getting it shortly because we're looking at doing our committee meetings by either WebEx or GoToMeeting, one of those sorts.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Good comments.
Don, this is
Go ahead.
Don, this is Steve. Check with us on that too, because we do have a system for video conferencing, and we want to try and make sure it's consistent. But we do have it, and I can get you information on that.
Outstanding. So we're going to move forward with that, and we're going to come up with some recommendation, take that all in, and get something that work and have that in place, hopefully in time to satisfy the requirements of the PAC and getting public comment.
And Chairman Gleason, I did have one more
Go ahead.
item of business. I just wanted to note a couple things pertaining to Groundwater Authority business that are going on behind the scenes. The 2018 State Controller's Report, we were notified that we were delinquent, and I just want to acknowledge Alan and I think it's Elsa from your staff that worked with us to get that filed and get it put in. And also we're currently doing the 2018-2019 Groundwater Authority financial audits, and again, working with Alan and my staff and getting that put together. So I want to thank Alan and all the people at the county that are working to get all this done. Appreciate it.
Outstanding, Don. Thank you very much for those comments. Okay, we're done. We're going to adjourn to closed session. I want to thank the patience of the public and the mannequin up there. I think his name was, I forget his name. But anyway, thank you very much for what you're doing.
Gary.
And we're going to retire into closed session in 5 minutes.